Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast, a space to pause, breathe, and come back to yourself, even in the middle of a full and busy life. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and in each episode, we explore mindfulness for real life, simple practices, reflections, tools to help you feel grounded, present, and connected to what matters most to you. So let's settle in and let's get centered. Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. In today's solo episode, we're going to talk about resiliency and what it means to soften into our strength. I think there's this belief out there that resiliency means pushing and bouncing back and this keep going energy. And when I say keep going energy, I mean this even just overriding energy, this pushing a boulder up a hill kind of energy. And sometimes resiliency does take that kind of grit, that kind of energy to move with the discomfort and tension of life. However, there's a slight shift to the definition and exploration of resiliency that I want to talk to you about today. Now, we're all navigating this thing called life, whether it's a breakout, a moment of burnout, a moment of career uncertainty, a family health scare, a personal diagnosis. These are the moments that reshape us. These are the moments that are asking us to be resilient. So wherever you are listening to this episode, cooking in the kitchen, taking a walk, commuting, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. I think all of our lives ask for us to be resilient. And for me, when I think back, the really profound moment in my life thus far that has asked for my resiliency, that woke me up to what being resilient actually meant, was when I was navigating my shitstorm, when I was diagnosed with cancer, and at the same time I lost my mother, all while at the age of 21 and young and vulnerable and having to learn so much about life, how to pay for health insurance, how to navigate my own health, how to make decisions, how to ask for help. And I specifically remember this moment right near the end of my 6-month chemotherapy journey where I was just exhausted. My body was feeling physically exhausted. I was feeling emotionally and mentally and spiritually drained. It was the middle of winter in New York. It just felt cold internally and externally. And I felt so low, and I was talking to, some of my closest mentors and family members about what I was feeling. And a lot of the loving advice they were giving me was, you're almost to the end. You're going to bounce back. You're going to feel stronger soon. Your hair is going to start growing back. All of this very encouraging conversation and words of wisdom. But what I really internalized when hearing all of this was this bounce back narrative that I think can be really toxic when it comes to resiliency. And so, when we think of resiliency, it's stay positive, push through, you can keep going, get back to normal, be strong. And the problem with this is that it can create this kind of pressure. And again, sometimes pressure is good because things shift and change and perform under pressure. But sometimes we create this unnecessary pressure for ourselves that it creates unnecessary stress. And I say unnecessary stress because our bodies and our brains and our lives are already full of stress. We don't need to be adding more stress to create change. And then with this pressure, there's also this dismissal of grief that's happened. When we have faced a big loss or heartbreak or moment of uncertainty or change in life, and people just say, keep going, keep pushing, it doesn't really acknowledge the grief or the change that's happening for somebody. There's typically a shedding or a letting go. And it dismisses this idea that, you know, there's the same, that you're the same, that if you push through and you get back, that you're going back to your quote unquote old self, or that you're finding, what's normal to you in life, right? After a breakup, you're going to get back to your old self and your old routine, and you're going to feel normal again. But the thing is, when we experience these moments in life that rock us, they change us. They change us forever. And that's where resiliency gets to help us, because it's this capacity to adapt. It's this capacity to recover and continue to move forward with greater wisdom and self trust. So I'll say that again. When I like to think about resiliency, is not this idea of pushing forward and needing to just use the grit. It's this idea that we can adapt and we can recover and we can continue to move forward with greater wisdom and self-trust. I used to think that resiliency just meant hold on tighter and keep pushing forward with your strength. And it's a mental strength, and it's physical strength, and it's emotional strength. But I started to feel that this idea of strength also became kind of toxic, because the strength overrode my ability to trust myself. This strength became more about control than actually being present to what's needed. I was in a weekend workshop called Grace with one of my mentors, and it's this embodiment workshop where we do a lot of somatic movement and body work and introspection and sharing. And so there are these different postures that the body gets shaped into, to think about how we can use our body to lead in life instead of just getting wrapped up in the mind and our thoughts. And this work is really transformational. Krista Petty Raymer is the creator, and she's one of my mentors. I've had her on the podcast before. And I remember in one of the weekends that I attended, I was in a plank position, which was one of the postures. And I am holding that plank. I don't even remember how many minutes were going by. Music is playing, and I am looking around at other people who are on their knees planking or planking against the wall. And I'm starting to feel competitive. Oh, I'm stronger than you. I'm going to hold my plank longer than you. And I'm shaking and I'm breathing and I'm tensing. And I remember Krista walked up to me and whispered in my ear, yeah, hold stronger, or said something along those lines. And at first, I kind of took that as yeah, I'm fucking strong. I'm going to hold this plank, see my strength. And then later, maybe even years later, I started to realize how I could hold my strength, this physical and mental strength, as sometimes as a guard, as a block to actually being present to what's here with life, to being present to receiving, to being present to being able to actually trust myself and move through life with this different angle of resiliency. So, years later, after coming to this realization, I've started to switch. It's we need strength within resiliency, but to think about it as really softening into the strength, and how softening into strength doesn't make me weaker, because, that's what I used to feel like what would happen is I'd get weaker if I've softened. I would crumble. I would roll over and play dead. I'd fall behind. But really, softening into the strength is more about coming back to this present moment where I can actually receive life. And when I say receive life, I mean hear myself, hear the whispers of my intuition, check in of like what is in alignment with myself, what feels actually good, so that I'm moving forward, staying connected internally versus trying to, again, push forward and bounce back to this older version of myself that might not actually be who I am right now. So when I soften into my strength, it's about being strong, being grounded, being rooted, like holding a plank, but actually softening my face, dropping my shoulders, letting my breath be really wide and deep and full, and allowing myself to soften into it instead of tighten and resist as I hold that strength. I welcome you to pause here for a moment and think about the last time you held a plank or some sort of physical posture that asked for your strength, that asked for you to withstand some tension and pressure. And notice, how did your body respond? Were you tightening your jaw? Were you in your head cursing or counting down or saying kind things or mean things to yourself? Were you gripping tighter? Were you able to breathe more fully? And however you responded in that moment, can you imagine what it would be like to practice softening into your strength? So, as you're holding this posture that is maybe wobbly or engaging new muscles, or challenging your physical and mental strength, can you soften into it? Can you release a little bit more tension in the face? A little bit more ease in the breath? What would that actually be like for you? For me, these are the micro moments, these moments that teach us about resiliency, right? This capacity to adapt, to recover, and continue to move forward with greater wisdom and self trust. And so, as you're holding this plank, right, can you feel your body adapting, recovering, getting stronger, but from this place of ease, not from this place of pushing or control? And sometimes when we're in these postures, there's a little voice that I notice like, okay, do I want to keep holding this? Am I holding this because I'm just trying to prove this to somebody? Am I doing this because this feels good? Am I doing this because a teacher is telling me to keep holding it? Would it be wiser for me to take a modified plank in this moment and still hold the posture? Would that feel kinder to my body? So, in these moments when we have these dialogues about what we're navigating in life, can we trust what comes up for ourselves? Can we trust ourselves to listen, meet the circumstances that are arising, and make the most wise choice? And when we soften, we're actually able to hear what's underneath. We're not in survival mode, we're not fighting ourselves. And that is where real resiliency lives. And when you practice self trust, there's this deeper strength that actually emerges, this soft strength that emerges that says, I can meet this moment. It's not, I can push through this moment. It's like, I can meet this moment. I can care for myself through this. I don't need to force my way through. I can trust whatever choice I make is the best choice for me. There are 4 dimensions, 4 parts to this resiliency practice, and they all begin with an R, helpful ways to remember. So the first one is to regulate. And what I mean by that is get yourself in the present moment. When we're hijacked by stress, by fear, by some of our overwhelm archetype parts, and if you haven't done your overwhelm archetype quiz, you can check that out at wadebrill.com and discover your overwhelm archetype. But when we're hijacked by those different parts of ourselves or stress, we need to come into the present moment. We need to ground. And for all of us, that looks different. Sometimes regulating could be a hug from a loved one. It could be snuggle time with a furry friend. It could be taking a walk. It could be doing some breath work or some meditation. So when life happens, right, in these bigger moments and smaller moments in life, when you get some really bad or intense feedback from a manager, hard to take, if you have a really hard conversation in a relationship or a breakup, if you get a big medical bill, if you are navigating a moment of uncertainty within your own health, if you're training in the gym to meet your PR or you're doing sports and want to really win this match, we need to get regulated. We need to come back to the present moment. And it's really interesting because I heard Simon Sinek say this, that tennis players have this really amazing ability to focus, like the best tennis players in the world. And what sets them apart is that if they miss a point, 2 seconds later, they're at that next point. And so they really have to think about their mindset and flip it instead of, oh shit, why did I just miss that point, and start to ruminate and spiral. They have to focus their attention on, I love this game. I'm like here right now. And it brings them back to what they're doing right here in this moment. They're not thinking about that last point and what they did wrong or what they could have done better. So they get regulated, right? They come back to the present moment. They find their feet. They connect to something that supports them in this present moment to stay present, to stay curious, to stay open. That is a regulated nervous system, and where their prefrontal cortex is online. So this brings us to the second R, which stands for reframe. So instead of going into the spirals of what did I do wrong, or I'm failing, or I just missed that point, I'm so stupid, can we reframe? So just like tennis players, they reframe and they're like, wow, I love this game. I get to play this game. Can we say something to ourselves like, I'm learning. I'm doing the best that I can. I can figure this out. I'm growing. I'm really proud of myself for trying. I'm not alone. I can ask for support. Whatever you need to say, whatever you need to hear to take yourself out of these negative thought loops that aren't really helpful in moments that are calling for us to be resilient. So when I think back to my cancer journey, I remember like there were these choice points when I was sitting in meditation practice where I could easily start to go down this rabbit hole of, oh my God, the cancer is eating my body and it's destroying me, and what is going to happen to my health and my future, and am I going to live? Am I going to get healthy? Right? It just spiral out so easily. And in those moments, I had to reframe what was happening. And I had to say, I'm sending my body love. I had to really visualize sending my cells healing, loving energy, trying to release the tension that was in my body, right? Softening. So the reframe also helps us put down that fighting, forceful energy. Like I have to push through this discomfort. And instead, we get to offer ourselves actually compassion. We get to offer ourselves a kind way to be in the present moment. The third R stands for restore, right? How do we restore, renew our energy? Because recovery is really essential here. And recovery looks kind of different, right? It's not just asking for a rest day, even though that is kind of what we need if we're exerting a lot of energy. But rest could look like physical sleep, but it could also be restorative practices, things that bring joy, things that bring nourishment to our system, like play and lightness. And when we're dealing with heavy shit in life, when we're navigating trying times and hard periods, it is so easy for all of our time and energy to be on the difficult things, on the figuring out the healthcare bills, on the problem solving, on the feeling like you have to work harder and smarter and better. But we can't keep doing those things. We can't keep working on the things that are hard if we're also not making time and space to restore and recover. So that's where that pushing element, we can't push through. We need to have charged batteries. So think about what rest, what play, what nourishment is actually going to support you here. And you might feel like, how is this being productive to help me be resilient to keep going? But I promise you, this is the energy that you get to create so that you're not burning out, so that you actually have a full tank to keep meeting yourself and meeting the moment to adapt. If you don't have energy in your tank, it's a lot harder to adapt to the present moment, to navigate what's happening. And then this fourth dimension of resiliency is really about coming back. It's about returning, the fourth R, returning, coming back to yourself, coming back to your values of who you are in this moment, your intentions. You're not the same person that you were a month ago, or the last time you trained for that game, or the last time you led a presentation, or the last time you dated. So it's like, who do you want to be in this moment? Ask yourself that. Who do you want to be in this moment? And if you feel lost, think about who in your life do you really admire that's navigated something similar, or you've admired how they showed up in a certain situation. And what are the values that they leaned into that you can lean into? I think something we can forget is that in order to build muscle and physical strength, it's about tension, right? It's about tension and stress, putting our muscles under tension and stress. But we also need recovery in order to build that strength, in order to actually build that muscle. So when we think about resiliency, it's not just this stress and pushing through, right? We need all of these R's, these four dimensions, to create this holistic container so that we're building this soft strength that helps us to keep moving forward, where we can engage our masculine doing energy and also this feminine fluidity, receptive energy, where we can hold both, be soft and strong at the same time. Resiliency is not us becoming unshakable to life. It's knowing that when life shakes you, because it will, you can return to yourself with care, with adaptability, with compassion. So here are some journaling prompts to keep deepening this reflection. So I welcome you to grab a piece of paper and pen, or if you're walking, you can write down some notes in your phone or do a little voice note to yourself. But pausing and checking in, what challenges am I currently facing right now? What challenges am I currently facing right now? Is there something going on in your health, interpersonal relationships, your finances? The next prompt, what part of me feels the most vulnerable right now? What part of me feels the most vulnerable? How have I already demonstrated my resiliency? As I'm navigating this challenging thing in life, how have I already demonstrated my resiliency? Maybe you've paused to check in with yourself. Maybe you've asked for support. Maybe you are just giving yourself space to feel what's coming up. Maybe you're giving yourself permission to rest and continue to move forward. And what would softening into my strength, what could that look like right now? What could softening into my strength look like right now? And then what's one supportive action I can take to support me softening into my strength? If you spend some time reflecting on these prompts, I would love to hear what comes up for you. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at OneWade and we can continue the conversation. And if you are in the Seattle area, on June 14th, I am holding a day-long mindfulness retreat with my co-facilitator, Heather. She'll be facilitating some guided breath work. I'll be facilitating a lot of mindfulness, meditation, some silence, weaving in and out. So if you're looking for a day of restoration, a day to really step away from all the doing and the technology and allow yourself to feel and be, then this might be right up your alley. So you can check out more information in the show notes of how to sign up. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it helpful, insightful, supportive, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast. It helps so much, as well as share this episode with somebody in your life that needs some support around their resiliency or even just wants some inspiration that they are resilient. Thank you for allowing me into your ears, your heart, your mind. It is such a privilege and an honor to share this work with you. Until next time, stay centered.